Jim Rickards, the transformational crash that will shape a generation. Hey there, let's dive into something that might just rock the financial world and change how we see economics for generations to come. We're talking about the fascinating concept of debt to GDP ratio. Not your typical dinner conversation, I know, but stick with me because it's the key to understanding how things are about to get really interesting. Welcome to Wealth Wiz. We want to give you the information and resources you need to manage your money and create a bright future on this channel. We have you covered, whether you want to save, invest, or manage your debt. So be sure to like the subscribe button and let's get started if you're prepared to join us on this financial transformational adventure. Imagine this. You're handling your finances, juggling credit card debt, and balancing your income. If you owe $50,000 on your credit card but you're making a cool $5 million a year, paying off that debt is a breeze. On the other hand, if you're making just $30,000 annually, that $50,000 debt feels like a mountain you can never conquer. It's all about comparing your debt to your income, a concept that's just as crucial for countries as it is for individuals. So let's apply this to the United States, a nation known for its big dreams and even bigger debts. Right now, the US national debt sits at a whopping $31 trillion, with the majority of it tied up in US Treasury securities. To understand whether this is a ticking time bomb or just a manageable inconvenience, we turn to the debt to GDP ratio, a handy tool that shows us the proportion of debt compared to the country's total economic output. Here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Let's rewind to the era of Ronald Reagan, when the White House was his domain in the 1980s. Back then, the US debt to GDP ratio was a relatively cozy 30%. It felt like a time when the economic gears were humming smoothly and borrowing seemed to be under control. However, if we fast forward to today's landscape, that once cozy ratio has ballooned to a staggering 130%. Yes, you read that right. Over 130%. So what's the big deal? Why does this numerical leap matter? Well, it's akin to a financial fork in the road, a point where things might shift dramatically. Imagine this ratio as a financial tightrope. There's a certain point at which your balancing act becomes trickier, and that point is around 90%. This is the magic number where economists nod in agreement. Beyond this, the multiplier effect, which is that nifty boost you normally get from borrowing, starts to lose its magical touch. It's like borrowing money to supercharge growth, but once that debt to GDP ratio steps beyond 90%, the juice isn't quite worth the squeeze anymore. Think of it like a carnival ride that's thrilling until you hit a certain speed, after which it becomes a bit of a blur. The same logic applies here. This ratio, crossing 90%, marks a kind of financial speed limit where the additional growth from borrowing starts to decelerate. It's like the laws of physics meet the world of economics, and suddenly the playbook changes. This insight might sound a tad esoteric, but it's actually a big deal. It's a subtle yet profound reminder that the economy, just like anything else, has its limits, and once we hit those boundaries, the rules of the game shift in unexpected ways. In simpler terms, borrowing to spur growth stops being effective when your debt becomes too massive compared to your economic output. The US has crossed this threshold, and it's hanging out with some financially challenged pals like Greece, Italy, and Lebanon. Not exactly the A-list group you'd want to be in. Now, there's this intriguing economic concept called modern monetary theory, or MMT, and its proponents argue that countries like the US, which have control over their own currency, can avoid defaulting on debt by simply printing more money. It sounds like a simple solution, right? Just print more money and pay off your debts. But it's not that straightforward when you consider factors like inflation, exchange rates, and global economic interdependence. Before we go any further, let me extend a sincere invitation to you to join our expanding community. You can access a range of financial material by subscribing to our channel, including in-depth guides, useful advice, and expert interviews. Therefore, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button to become a member of our money family right away. Let's talk about China. They've been a manufacturing powerhouse, churning out goods for the world, but their web of supply chains has left them vulnerable. Just like a house of cards, if one piece falls, the whole structure collapses. This was evident when the pandemic hit and manufacturing chains broke down, leading to shortages worldwide. China is now realizing that it needs to rethink its approach, diversify its supply chains, and perhaps even create its own economic club. The pandemic? Well, it was like a magnifying glass for our global economy. It zoomed in on our vulnerabilities and made them glaringly obvious. Picture this: you stroll into your local grocery store, ready to grab your favorite hot sauce, and what do you find? Empty shelves. Suddenly, something as simple as spicy condiments becomes a treasure hunt, a task that feels way more complicated than it should. It's like we got a behind-the-scenes look at the inner workings of our supply chains. As it turns out, our hyper-connected global economy has a downside: fragility. We've been so focused on making things efficient and streamlined, like clockwork, that we forgot to account for life's unexpected twists. And the pandemic? Well, it pulled the rug out from under us, revealing the hidden costs of our efficiency at all costs approach. We saw it play out in real time. People started to hoard, think toilet paper frenzy, and that threw the supply chain into a tailspin. Empty shelves led to panic buying, which in turn led to even emptier shelves. It's like a domino effect, and the cycle just kept spinning. What's happening now is a shift towards more localized production. The era of global supply chains is giving way to what I call the College of Nations. Countries that share values, rule of law, and democratic principles will likely come together to create a new, more resilient economy. We're talking about nations like the US, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, and Japan. China, on the other hand, might form its own economic club, focused on its own interests and allies. Here's a concrete example. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, or TSMC, a tech giant, is investing billions in new manufacturing plants in the US. They're diversifying their supply chain and securing their future against geopolitical uncertainties. This move symbolizes a broader trend of nations reconsidering their global dependencies. In a nutshell, we're witnessing an economic transformation. The world is redefining how it trades, manufactures, and thrives. The days of being solely reliant on far-off countries for essential goods are coming to an end. We're entering a new era where the College of Nations is setting the stage for a more robust, resilient, and locally oriented global economy. And as this story continues to unfold, it might just change the way we talk about economics around the dinner table. Thank you for watching today's video. We sincerely hope that it was enlightening and helpful for your financial journey. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you liked it and want to see more like it.